security has to be called. When a guest's sense of entitlement collides with a host who refuses to back down. In just 30 seconds, one comment would turn a friendly chat into the most explosive morning television moment anyone had ever witnessed. This is the story of how everything fell apart on live television. It started like any other morning on Good Morning America. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and Lara Spencer sat ready with her notes, prepared to welcome one of the most talked about women in the world. Meghan Markle was scheduled for what was supposed to be a light promotional interview. Something easy, something simple, something that would give viewers their morning dose of celebrity news before they headed off to work. But that's not what happened. From the very first question, something felt off. Lara started with what seemed like a perfectly reasonable opener, the kind of warm, friendly question that every talk show host asks to ease their guest into the conversation. So Meghan, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. I know our viewers are excited to hear from you. Let's start with something fun. What's it been like adjusting to life in a new city? It was softball. It was gentle. It was the kind of question designed to make a guest feel comfortable. Meghan's response, though, came with an edge that caught everyone off guard. Well, Lara, I think what people don't understand is that my life isn't just about adjusting to cities. I've lived all over the world. I'm not some small-town girl who's overwhelmed by big places. The studio went quiet for just a beat. Lara, ever the professional, kept her smile intact and tried to redirect. Of course, I just meant that any big change can be, an adjustment. New routines, new faces. I don't really do adjustments, Meghan cut in, her tone sharp. I adapt. There's a difference. Adjusting sounds passive. I'm someone who takes control of my environment. Lara nodded slowly, her smile tightening just slightly at the corners. The crew behind the cameras exchanged glances. This wasn't the energy they'd expected. Interviews like this were supposed to be breezy, full of laughter and light anecdotes. But there was a tension building, something brewing just beneath the surface. Lara pressed forward, flipping to her next question. Okay, well, speaking of taking control, you've been involved in several projects lately. Can you tell us about what you're working on now? Meghan leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with a deliberate slowness that felt almost theatrical. I could tell you about my projects, Lara, but I'm wondering if your audience is actually interested in the work I do, or if they just want to hear gossip. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Lara's eyebrows raised just a fraction. I think our audience, Lara said carefully, her voice still friendly, but with a new firmness underneath, is interested in hearing about you. That's why you're here. That's why we invited you. Right, Meghan said, drawing out the word. You invited me. But let's be honest about what this is. You want me to sit here and be charming and smile and give you sound bites that you can clip for social media. You want me to play the part. Lara's smile faded completely now. She set her notes down on her lap and looked directly at Meghan. I want to have a conversation with you. That's what we do here. We talk to people about their lives, their work, the things they care about. If that feels like playing a part to you, I'm not sure what to tell you. Maybe you could tell me why every question feels like it's designed to box me into some narrative you've already written, Meghan shot back. The tension was electric now. The camera operators kept filming, because what else could they do? This was live television. There was no stopping it, no editing it out. Millions of people were watching this unfold in real time. Lara took a breath, visibly composing herself. Meghan, I haven't written any narrative. I asked you about where you're living and what you're working on. These are normal questions, basic questions, the same questions I'd ask anyone sitting in that chair. But I'm not anyone, am I? Meghan's voice rose slightly. That's the whole point. You all act like you want to treat me normally, but then you pick apart everything I say. everything I do. So, forgive me if I'm a little defensive when someone starts digging. I'm not digging, Lara said, her voice calm but steel running through it now. I'm asking. There's a difference. And honestly, if these questions feel like digging to you, I don't know how you expect to do any interview, anywhere, with anyone. Meghan's face hardened. Maybe I don't expect to. Maybe I'm tired of sitting across from people who pretend to care while they're really just waiting for me to say something they can turn into a headline. Then why did you agree to come here? Lara asked, and there was no hostility in the question, just genuine confusion. If you think this is also fake, if you think I'm just waiting to trap you, why are you sitting in that chair? Meghan didn't answer right away. She looked at Lara, then at the cameras, then back at Lara. Because I was told it would be good for my image, she finally said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Isn't that what it's always about? Image management, perception, making sure people see you the right way. Lara shook her head slowly. That's not what this show is about. We're not here to manage anyone's image. We're here to have real conversations with real people. And right now, I'm trying to do that. But you're making it impossible. I'm making it impossible, Meghan's voice shot up. You're the one asking insulting questions and then acting surprised when I don't just smile and nod. What question was insulting? Lara asked, her voice rising to match Meghan's now. Tell me, which question insulted you? All of them, Meghan snapped. The way you asked where I'm living, like I'm some lost little girl. The way you asked about my work, like you're doing me a favor by even pretending to care. It's all condescending. Lara's jaw tightened. The camera captured every micro-expression, every flicker of emotion crossing her face. I have been nothing but respectful to you from the moment you walked onto this set, Lara said, and her words measured and deliberate. I prepared questions. I welcomed you warmly. I have tried repeatedly to have a normal conversation with you, and you have met every single attempt with hostility and accusations. Maybe because I'm smart enough to see through the act, Meghan countered. There's no act. Lara's voice finally broke through her professional veneer, louder now, frustration seeping through. This is my job. I talk to people. I've done this for years, and I have never had a guest sit here and accuse me of the things you're accusing me of when all I've done is try to give you a platform to speak. A platform, Meghan repeated mockingly. How generous of you. The crew was frozen. Production assistants stood with clipboards clutched to their chests, unsure whether to intervene or let it play out. The director in the control room was frantically trying to decide if they should cut to commercial, but this was live. There was nowhere to hide. Lara leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, looking directly into Meghan's eyes. Do you hear yourself right now? Do you understand how you sound? You came on this show voluntarily. Nobody forced you. And now you're sitting here on live television insulting me, insulting my crew, insulting the entire concept of what we do here. For what? To prove some point about how you're above all this? Meghan stood up abruptly, her microphone nearly pulling out of its pack. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. You're right, Lara said, standing as well, her voice sharp and clear. You don't, but you did agree to be here. You did sit down in that chair. And you did spend the last 10 minutes turning what should have been a pleasant conversation into whatever this is. This is me refusing to be talked down to by someone who thinks she's doing me a favor, Meghan said, her voice loud enough that it echoed slightly in the studio. I never talked down to you. Lara's voice matched her volume now. Not once. I asked you normal questions, and you turned them into attacks. You made this hostile. You created this situation. And now you're acting like you're the victim. Meghan pointed a finger at Lara, her hand shaking slightly. Don't you dare tell me I'm playing the victim. You have no idea what I deal with. No idea what it's like to have every single word twisted, every action scrutinized. Then maybe, Lara said, her voice dropping to something colder, something harder. You should stop giving people reasons to scrutinize. Maybe if you showed up to an interview and actually participated in good faith instead of looking for a fight, people would respond differently. The words landed like a slap. Meghan's face flushed red. How dare you? How dare I what? Lara challenged. Tell you the truth? Point out that you've been combative and rude from the very first question? That's my job, Meghan. When someone sits in that chair and acts the way you're acting, I'm supposed to call it out. Your job is to kiss up to celebrities and make them look good, Meghan spat. My job, Lara corrected, her voice like ice, is to have honest conversations. And honestly, this has been one of the most unpleasant interviews I've ever conducted. Not because of the questions, not because of the topic. Oh, but because of you. Meghan took a step toward Lara, and for a moment, the entire studio held its breath. You're going to regret this, Meghan said, her voice low and threatening. Lara didn't back down. She stood her ground, her chin up, her eyes locked on Meghan's. The only thing I regret is giving you this platform to show everyone exactly who you are. That was it. That was the line that broke everything. Meghan ripped the microphone off her jacket, the sound of the clip popping open echoing through the studio. She threw it down on the chair, the equipment clattering against the hard surface. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. Then leave, Lara said simply. Meghan turned toward the exit, but before she could take more than a few steps, Lara's voice rang out across the studio. Actually, security, please escort our guest out. Meghan spun back around, her eyes wide with shock and fury. You're having me removed? You said you were done, Lara replied, her voice steady. I'm making sure you are. You're not going to storm around my studio, disrupting my crew, making a scene. You wanted to leave, so leave. But you're going to do it the right way. 2 security guards appeared from the wings, their expressions neutral, but their presence unmistakable. This is ridiculous, Meghan hissed. You can't do this. I absolutely can, Lara said. This is my set. These are my people, and you are not welcome here anymore. Meghan looked around wildly, as if searching for someone to back her up, someone to intervene on her behalf. But the crew members avoided her gaze. The producer stayed silent. Nobody was coming to her rescue. You're going to pay for this, Meghan said, her voice shaking with rage. I'll take my chances, Lara responded. The security guards moved closer, not touching Meghan, but making it clear that their presence was not optional. This way, please, one of them said quietly. Meghan's hands were balled into fists at her sides. Her face was a mask of fury and humiliation. For a long moment, she just stood there, as if willing someone, anyone, to tell her this wasn't really happening. But it was happening, and everyone was watching. Finally, with a sound that was half scoff, half growl, Meghan turned and walked toward the exit. The security guards followed at a respectful distance, but they were there. They were escorting her out. There was no mistaking it. As she reached the door that led off the set, Meghan paused and looked back over her shoulder. You're all going to regret this, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lara didn't respond. She just stood there, her arms crossed, watching as Meghan disappeared through the door and out of the studio. The moment the door closed, the studio erupted. Not with cheers or gasps, but with an exhale. A collective release of tension that had been building for the last 15 minutes. Crew members looked at each other with wide eyes. The camera operators kept their cameras rolling, capturing Lara's face as she processed what had just happened. Lara walked back to her chair and sat down slowly. She looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, she just breathed. Then she spoke. Well, she said, her voice remarkably steady, considering everything that had just transpired. That was not how I expected this morning to go. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crew. Lara smoothed her hands over her skirt, collecting herself. You know, we prepare for these interviews. We research our guests. We come up with questions that we think will lead to interesting, engaging conversations. But sometimes, no matter how much you prepare, things go sideways. And when they do, all you can do is be honest, be direct, and stand up for yourself and your team. She looked around at her crew, her expression softening. I want to say something to everyone watching at home. What you just saw was not manufactured drama. It was not planned. It was a real moment where two people fundamentally could not find common ground. And while I wish it had gone differently, I'm not going to apologize for standing my ground. I'm not going to apologize for defending my crew and this show. Lara picked up her notes, the same notes she'd started with, the questions that had never been fully answered. We had planned to talk about projects, about life changes, about the future. We had planned to have a conversation. And I'm sorry that our guest wasn't interested in having that conversation. I'm sorry that what could have been a great interview turned into something else entirely. She set the notes back down. But I'm not sorry for how I handled it. When someone comes onto your set, onto your show, and treats you and your team with disrespect, you have two choices. You can sit there and take it, or you can stand up. And I chose to stand up. The camera pushed in slightly, capturing the determination in Lara's eyes. This show has always been about respect. Respect for our guests, respect for our audience, and respect for the truth. And when those values are challenged, we don't back down. Lara looked directly into the lens, speaking to the millions of people watching from their homes, their offices, their phones. I know some of you might think I was too harsh. Some of you might think I should have let it slide, should have smiled through it, should have just moved on to the next question. But here's the thing. At some point, you have to draw a line. At some point, you have to say, this is not okay. And that's what I did today. She paused, letting the words settle. I don't enjoy conflict. I don't enjoy confrontation. What I enjoy is talking to interesting people about interesting things. I enjoy learning from my guests, hearing their stories, sharing those stories with all of you. That's what I love about this job. But I won't be disrespected while doing it. I won't let my team be disrespected. And I won't pretend that what just happened was anything other than what it was. Lara glanced at her producer, who gave her a small nod. We're going to take a break, Lara said, turning back to the camera. When we come back, we'll reset, we'll regroup, and we'll continue with our show. Because that's what we do. We keep going. The camera held on her face for a moment longer, capturing the resolve there, the quiet strength. We'll be right back. As the show cut to commercial, Lara remained in her chair, her hands folded in her lap. The studio was buzzing with energy, with conversation, with the aftermath of what everyone had just witnessed. A producer approached her, tablet in hand. Lara, social media is exploding. Everyone's talking about it. Lara nodded, but didn't ask for details. She didn't need to know what people were saying. Not yet. Right now, she just needed to breathe. Another crew member brought her a bottle of water. She accepted it with a grateful smile and took a long drink. You okay? Someone asked. I'm fine, Lara said, and she meant it. I'm completely fine. And she was, because she had done what she needed to do. She had stood her ground. She had refused to let entitled behavior dictate how her show ran. She had drawn a line and enforced it. The makeup artist came over to do a quick touch-up before they went back on air. As the powder brush swept across her face, Lara closed her eyes for just a moment. 30 seconds, the stage manager called out. Lara opened her eyes and straightened in her chair. She was ready. Ready to move forward. Ready to continue the show. Ready to get back to doing what she did best. 15 seconds. The studio quieted down. Crew members moved back to their positions. Cameras adjusted their angles. 10 seconds. Lara took one more deep breath, centered herself, and prepared to welcome her audience back. 5, 4, 3. The countdown continued in silence, the stage manager's fingers ticking off the final seconds. And then they were live again. "Welcome back," Lara said, her voice warm and professional, as if the last 15 minutes had been filed away, dealt with and set aside. "We have a great show still ahead of us. Up next, we're going to be talking about some incredible new technology that's changing the way we think about home cooking." And just like that, the show moved on. Because that's what live television does. It keeps moving. It keeps going. There's no pause button, no rewind. There's only forward. But nobody watching would forget what they had seen. Nobody in that studio would forget the moment when Lara Spencer stood up to a guest who thought she could walk all over her. Nobody would forget the security guards escorting Meghan Markle off the set. It was a moment that would be replayed, discussed, debated, and analyzed for days, weeks, months to come. Clips would circulate online. Think pieces would be written. People would take sides, argue in comment sections, create memes and hashtags. But in that studio, in that moment, as Lara transitioned smoothly to her next segment, there was only the work, only the show, only the commitment to keep going, no matter what. Because that's what professionals do. And Lara Spencer was nothing if not a professional. The cooking segment went smoothly. The guest was delightful. The demonstration was engaging. And Lara asked thoughtful questions that drew out interesting answers. It was everything the first interview should have been. As the show progressed through its remaining segments, as the minutes ticked by and the end of the broadcast approached, the energy in the studio gradually normalized. The tension that had gripped everyone during the confrontation slowly released its hold. But it was still there, hovering in the background, a reminder of what had happened. A marker of a moment that had changed something fundamental about how people viewed both Lara and her former guest. When the show finally wrapped, when the cameras stopped rolling and the lights dimmed slightly, Lara stood up from her chair and stretched. Her shoulders were tight, her jaw slightly sore from the tension she'd been holding. The crew gathered around her, and for a moment, nobody quite knew what to say. Then, someone started clapping. Just one person, slow and deliberate. Then another joined in, and another, until the entire crew was applauding. Lara felt her eyes sting slightly, but she blinked it away and smiled instead. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for having my back." "Always," her producer said, stepping forward. "That was incredibly handled. You were fair, you were firm, and you were right." Lara nodded, accepting the words, but not dwelling on them. She wasn't interested in being congratulated for doing what should be basic, for standing up for herself and her team, for refusing to tolerate disrespect. "Let's get ready for tomorrow," she said, already thinking ahead. "We have a good lineup. Let's make it great." And that was that. The moment was over. The confrontation was done. The guest was gone. All that remained was the work. The show. The commitment to coming back the next day and doing it all over again. Because that's what Lara Spencer did. She showed up. She did her job. She treated people with respect and expected the same in return. And when that respect wasn't given, she didn't hesitate to protect herself, her team, and her show. That's what made her the good guy in this story. Not because she was perfect, not because she never lost her cool, but because when pushed, when challenged, when disrespected, she stood her ground with grace, with strength, and with unwavering professionalism. And in the end, that's what people would remember. Not the drama, not the conflict, not even the shocking moment when security was called. They would remember a woman who knew her worth, who defended her team, and who refused to let anyone make her feel small on her own set. That was the real story. That was what mattered. And as Lara gathered her things and prepared to leave the studio, she carried that knowledge with her. Not as a badge of honor, not as something to boast about, but as a quiet confidence that she had done the right thing in a difficult moment. She had been tested, and she had passed.